Saving money is a poor mindset, is a half-truth sold by people who benefit when you stay hungry. The poor save because instability trained them to fear tomorrow. The rich save because power requires reserves. The difference is not saving, the difference is what the money is protecting. Poor people save to survive interruption. Rich people save to exploit opportunity. One is hiding from danger, the other is waiting to buy weakness. Money sitting still is not power. Money positioned correctly is power. Cash under a mattress is fear. Cash waiting for a collapsing asset, desperate seller, or strategic move is a weapon. Society mocks savers because capitalism needs consumers, not secure people. A person with savings is harder to control. They can quit, they can refuse, they can wait. Debt makes people obedient. The real poor mindset is not saving money. The real poor mindset is worshipping safety so intensely that you never build anything capable of freeing you. Most people do not save because they are disciplined. They save because risk terrifies them. They do not invest because losing money would confirm what they secretly believe, that they are not powerful enough to recover. But people who say saving is poor often mean something uglier: spend, flex, borrow, perform, and call it abundance. That is not wealth. That is poverty wearing perfume. Status culture hates quiet money. It wants visible money: cars, watches, trips, designer signals, curated proof that you are not ordinary. But visible money is often money that already left you. The wealthy understand something brutal. The first job of money is not pleasure. It is distance. Distance from desperation. Distance from bad bosses. Distance from humiliation. Distance from needing anyone too much. Saving is only poor when it becomes your religion. When every dollar is defended but none is deployed. When your life becomes a bunker instead of a battlefield. Humanity respects power, not frugality. But without reserves, you have no power. You only have income, and income can be taken from you. So the truth is colder. Saving money is not a poor mindset. Saving without strategy is. Spending without ownership is. Looking rich while being financially fragile is the most common poverty ritual in modern society.
The strange thing about money is that humans rarely want money itself. They want what money prevents: embarrassment, dependence, rejection, powerlessness. Very few people obsess over wealth because they love numbers. They obsess because somewhere in their memory exists a moment where they felt small. A parent checking prices before buying groceries, an argument about bills heard through a thin apartment wall, the humiliation of needing help, the panic of not knowing what happens next month, the quiet terror of realizing the world respects you less when you cannot pay. Most financial behavior is not economic, it is psychological scar tissue. And society understands this better than people understand themselves. That is why modern capitalism no longer sells products. It sells emotional anesthesia. Luxury is sold as superiority. Convenience is sold as relief. Productivity is sold as self-worth. Investment is sold as identity. Even minimalism becomes status once enough wealthy people perform it publicly. Everything becomes performance eventually. Humans are social creatures pretending to be independent thinkers. A man buys a watch to feel successful, then discovers he only feels successful when other people notice it. A woman posts her vacation to share memories, but secretly checks who viewed it. A millionaire continues chasing money long after survival is secured because the addiction was never income, it was significance. And significance is one of the most dangerous drugs humans have ever created. Because once identity becomes attached to external proof, peace becomes impossible. There is always someone richer, smarter, younger, more admired, more desired. Modern life has turned comparison into a permanent psychological environment. For most of human history, people compared themselves to a village. Now they compare themselves to millions. The human nervous system was never designed for this. Every scroll silently informs people that their body is insufficient, their income is behind, their life is smaller, their success is late. And after enough exposure, people no longer know whether their desires are authentic or manufactured. That is why so many people become exhausted after finally obtaining what they thought they wanted, because achievement without self-understanding creates emotional confusion. They expected arrival. What they found was silence. The car did not remove insecurity. The promotion did not create self-respect. The relationship did not cure loneliness. The money did not produce meaning. It only amplified whatever already existed inside them. Money is an amplifier. If someone is deeply insecure, money often turns them into a richer, insecure person. If someone is empty, wealth gives them larger distractions. If someone is narcissistic, success can transform pathology into social admiration. Society often mistakes visibility for wisdom. Some of the most financially successful people on earth are psychologically starving. They cannot sit alone quietly, cannot rest without guilt, cannot separate love from usefulness, cannot tell whether people genuinely care about them or merely orbit their resources. This is why some wealthy people continue accumulating long after it makes rational sense. The accumulation is no longer practical. It becomes existential. If they stop moving, they might finally meet themselves. And many humans spend their entire lives avoiding that encounter. Because underneath ambition, consumption, and performance, there is often a simpler fear. If I stop proving myself, do I still matter? That question silently controls civilizations. People destroy their health to earn admiration from strangers. They sacrifice decades for lifestyles they barely experience. They postpone life waiting for some future moment where achievement grants emotional permission to feel enough. But the finish line keeps moving. Not because society is evil, because desire itself expands. Humans adapt frighteningly fast. The salary that once felt impossible becomes normal. The apartment becomes too small. The luxury becomes ordinary. The achievement fades into memory. And then the mind searches again. More, more, more. Not because humans are greedy monsters, because the human brain is designed for pursuit, not permanent satisfaction. This is why inner peace cannot be purchased through accumulation alone. A person who cannot emotionally tolerate stillness will use money the same way others use alcohol, validation, entertainment, or noise, as escape. And modern society rewards escape so aggressively that people confuse distraction for happiness. Constant stimulation has become the background music of civilization. Silence feels uncomfortable now. Stillness feels unproductive. Rest feels undeserved. People are terrified of empty space because empty space forces confrontation with regret, with mortality, with loneliness, with truth. So they stay busy, not always because life demands it, but because stillness reveals things achievement can temporarily hide. The irony is that many people chase financial freedom without realizing they are emotionally incapable of freedom. Because freedom is frightening. Real freedom means responsibility for your own existence, your own time, your own meaning, your own identity outside social approval. Many people say they want freedom while unconsciously craving structure, permission, and external validation. That is why some people leave toxic jobs only to recreate the same prison through lifestyle inflation. They escape one dependency and build another. The human mind will always construct cages if fear remains unresolved. This is why wisdom changes how money feels. Young people often think wealth means expansion. Older people eventually realize wealth is reduction. Reduction of anxiety, reduction of dependence, reduction of chaos, reduction of forced compromise. Real wealth is rarely loud because people who genuinely feel secure stop needing witnesses. They stop trying to dominate every room, stop competing with strangers, stop needing every purchase to communicate identity. There is a calmness that enters people once survival fear loosens its grip. Not arrogance, not superiority, just less desperation. And desperation is what controls most of humanity. Desperate people tolerate humiliation. Desperate people betray themselves. Desperate people stay in relationships that destroy them. Stay in jobs that hollow them out. Stay loyal to systems that quietly consume their spirit. Because fear narrows human vision. It convinces people survival is the same thing as living. But surviving is not the same as being alive. A person can make money for 40 years and never truly experience peace, never know themselves outside labor, never feel emotionally present long enough to appreciate existence itself. And eventually, time collects its debt. Bodies slow down, ambition weakens, noise fades. Then many people confront the terrifying realization that they spent most of life preparing to live instead of living. Not because they were stupid, because modern society trained them to postpone themselves endlessly. One more promotion, one more investment, one more milestone, one more proof of worthiness. But life was happening during the waiting. It was always happening during the waiting, and maybe that is the understanding people need most. Money matters, security matters, preparation matters, but a human being can become so obsessed with protecting life that they never actually touch it. And in the end, peace does not come from pretending money is meaningless. It comes from finally understanding what money was never capable of replacing. After all of this, the question is no longer how to become rich. The real question is whether success can enter your life without consuming your mind, because that is what destroys most people. Not failure, misaligned success. A person spends years trying to escape poverty, then accidentally builds a life they emotionally cannot survive. So the first principle is this: do not build a life that requires you to betray yourself to maintain it. That includes careers, relationships, social circles, lifestyles, identities. Anything that forces permanent performance will eventually poison you. Humans can survive short periods of pressure. They cannot survive decades of pretending. The nervous system keeps score. And eventually the body begins collecting unpaid emotional debt through anxiety, numbness, exhaustion, addiction, resentment, or quiet despair. This is why some people look successful but feel internally homeless. They built their entire existence around external approval. And approval is one of the weakest foundations a human can stand on because it changes constantly. Crowds are unstable. Trends are unstable. Status is unstable. Public admiration is unstable. If your identity depends on external reaction, your peace becomes permanently negotiable. So stop asking, how do I make people respect me? Ask, what kind of life allows me to respect myself when nobody is watching? That changes everything, because real self-respect is not confidence. Confidence can disappear. Confidence rises and falls with outcomes. Self-respect is different. Self-respect is knowing you are not secretly lying to yourself. You keep promises to yourself. You do not abandon your values under pressure. You do not destroy your health for applause. You do not sell your soul for access. You do not become cruel just because cruelty is rewarded. That creates a quieter kind of strength. A person who respects themselves moves differently, less performance, less desperation, less obsession with proving superiority. They no longer need every room to validate their existence. And strangely, that is often when real power begins, because desperation makes humans manipulatable. The moment someone desperately needs money, status, validation, or attention, the world can control them through it. But when a person learns how to emotionally survive without constant approval, something changes. They become harder to pressure, harder to shame, harder to buy. That is freedom, not absolute freedom. Human beings will always need money, relationships, community, survival, but psychological freedom, the ability to think clearly without constantly begging the world for emotional permission to exist. And that requires learning one brutal skill: the ability to tolerate being misunderstood. Most people are not exhausted because life is hard. They are exhausted because they are managing too many performances simultaneously. Different personalities for different groups. Different opinions for social acceptance. Different identities to maintain belonging. Eventually, the human mind fractures under excessive self-editing. So simplify. Not your ambition, not your intelligence, your falseness. Say less that you do not mean, Buy less that you do not need. Impress fewer people. Explain yourself less. Perform less wealth. Perform less suffering. Perform less perfection. There is enormous peace in becoming psychologically congruent, when your private self and public self stop living like strangers, and from there, money itself starts changing meaning. You stop seeing it as proof of worth. You start seeing it as stored life energy, because that is what money really is. Hours, attention, stress, focus, time away from loved ones, pieces of your finite existence converted into currency, which means spending becomes moral. Not morally in the political sense, morally in the existential sense. You begin asking different questions. Is this purchase genuinely improving my life, or helping me perform a version of myself? Is this ambition expanding my soul or feeding my ego? Am I building wealth or building dependency disguised as luxury? That awareness alone can save people decades of unconscious living. Because mature success is not about maximum consumption. It is about maximum alignment. A smaller aligned life is psychologically richer than a giant misaligned one. Some people earn millions and cannot breathe peacefully. Others live modestly but wake up without dread. One is externally wealthy. The other is internally free. And internal freedom matters because life becomes very clear eventually. Human beings do not suffer only from pain. They suffer from fragmentation, living against themselves, ignoring themselves, abandoning themselves repeatedly for survival, approval, or ambition. That is why emotional numbness spreads in modern society. People disconnect from themselves so often that eventually they cannot feel what is real anymore. So another principle becomes necessary. Protect your ability to feel, not impulsively, not emotionally uncontrolled, but honestly. Do not let the world turn you cold simply because it wounded you. There is a difference between strength and deadness. A hardened person may survive betrayal better, but they often lose tenderness too, curiosity, wonder, presence, love. And humans cannot build meaningful lives while emotionally anesthetized. The goal is not to become emotionless. The goal is to become emotionally stable enough that emotions stop controlling your direction. That requires solitude sometimes. Not isolation, solitude. Time without noise long enough to hear your actual thoughts before society edits them for you. Because if a human never sits alone honestly, they eventually inherit desires they never consciously chose. Then they spend decades chasing goals that do not even belong to them, and this is where life becomes dangerous. Not because people fail, because people succeed accidentally in the wrong direction. They become trapped inside achievements they no longer emotionally relate to. So move slower internally, not externally, internally. A calm mind makes better decisions than a frantic identity. Not every opportunity deserves pursuit. Not every battle deserves energy. Not every opinion deserves emotional reaction. Modern society monetizes human attention by keeping people psychologically overstimulated. Outrage, comparison, urgency, fear, endless noise. A distracted person is easier to influence, so reclaiming attention becomes an act of self-defense. Protect your mind carefully. What enters repeatedly becomes part of your internal architecture, and eventually your inner world becomes your actual world, because external success means very little if your internal reality feels unbearable to live inside. At some point, every intelligent human reaches the same realization. Life is not asking whether you can impress the world. Life is asking whether you can remain awake while living inside it, whether you can earn money without worshiping it, build success without becoming consumed by it, experience pain without becoming bitterness, experience ambition without losing tenderness, experience power without losing humanity. That balance is rare, but it is probably the closest thing to wisdom human beings ever reach. And maybe that is the final understanding. You do not need to escape society completely. You do not need to reject money. You do not need to abandon ambition. You simply need to stop confusing these things with your identity. Because when the performance finally falls away, when the noise quiets, when age strips away illusion, when life reduces itself to what was actually real, almost nobody cares how expensive your watch was. They care whether you were present, whether you were honest, whether you were emotionally alive, whether your success cost your soul, whether you learned how to love life before it ended, and if you can still recognize yourself after everything the world tried to turn you into, then you did not lose.